Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your attendance at tonight's meeting of the Temple City Council. It's currently 5 p.m. on June 15th, 2023. Please rise as Deputy City Secretary Liz Caraway leads us in the invocation, followed by our pledge, which will be led by Liz Caraway. Had to call audible there.
Dear Heavenly Father, summer is here, the season of no school and fun in the routines, and perhaps draw us deeper into prayer and closer to you. Jesus, thank you for summer. Thank you for light and warmth. Thank you for the sun. Thank you for the gifts of nature and for the annual cycles and seasons. Today, give us that grace again to see you as the creator, the one who lifts us up to be with you forever, even now. As the summer heat begins to descend upon us in Central Texas, my prayer is for those men and women who work out in the heat day in and day out, including our own Parks and Rec crews, utility and street maintenance, code enforcement, firefighters, police officers, and first responders, and all others. Lord, I just pray that you keep them hydrated and safe from the heat. And as we enter once again into an evening of decision-making, guide these council members and city leaders to weigh all their options and come together with the best ideas, collaborations, and decisions for the city of Temple. In your most gracious name I pray, amen. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
Republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Ms. Caraway. All right, moving on to public comments. Citizens who desire to address the council on any matter may do so. As long as you signed up prior to this meeting and you've met the qualifications that we discussed last week. We ask you please limit those comments to 3 minutes, and no discussion or final action will be taken by the city council. We do have a few folks that have signed up tonight. And first up will be Mr. CJ Grisham.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, CJ Grisham, Temple, Texas here. I was born here at Scotton Lake. I spent my youth growing up working on my family farm. Here, I come from, we're the 5th generation of Bell County citizens and many more generations as Texans beyond that. Actually, the reason I'm coming here to speak, I've sent an email to some of you, but it's exactly what you talked about as far as being a citizen of the city of Temple. This is, according to the agenda, this is the time for public comments. What is a member of the public? Well, according to our court system, a member of the public is used in conjunction with an identified or identifiable group, as it is here with a governmental body. Its meaning is contextually modified to mean a person who does not belong to the identified group. In other words, someone who is not a member of the city council. That's Austin Bulldog v. Leffingwell. So the phrase member of the public is often used to differentiate between ordinary citizens and the government. It does not differentiate between whether I'm a Temple citizen or not. The problem I have with the policy is that it violates several aspects of our Constitution. The first is Article 1, Section 2, all political powers inherent in the people. Governments are instituted for our benefit. Article 3, equal rights. All freemen, whether they form a social compact, have equal rights, and no man or set of men is entitled to exclusive separate public emoluments or privileges, but in consideration of public services. Section 8, freedom of speech. I don't need to go over that. And then finally, Section 19, no citizen of this state shall be deprived of life, liberty, property, privileges, or immunities, or in any manner disenfranchised. So here's the reason that the policy is wrong. Everywhere I go in this state, I am under the protection of the laws. When I go to Dallas, I'm under the protection of Dallas ordinances. I have to abide by Dallas ordinances.
if Dallas police pull me over or a dog catcher does something to me, I have a right to seek redress. And I do that through the Dallas government. What this policy does, imagine, let's go back to when Michael Dean was murdered. His family wasn't from here. But what this policy says is that unless there's an agenda item, his family had no right to come here and complain about the fact that one of our officers killed him. That's wrong. If we're subjected, if we are subjects to the law of every city, then we also have the privileges of being able to seek redress for that. I ask that you revisit this and take it down. It's unconstitutional. It's illegal. And as an attorney, I don't want to sue my own city to fix it. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Is it Adamas Perez? You signed up to speak. Do you have anything you'd like, or did you just sign up as you walked in? Okay. Well, you're on the list if you'd like to speak. So kind of put you on the spot there. All right, moving on. Ms. Thompson, Bobby. It's good to see you.
(904) South Henderson Street is my address. I was glad to see Zoe Grant and the mayor at our Friendship House celebration today. Thank you for coming. I'm here to speak about the vacant lot that's on 901 South Henderson Street. The grass is getting very tall and almost 5 feet tall. And I know bugs and stuff come from that, into the neighborhood and stuff. I'm also asking, is there any way possible that y'all could do some trimming on those trees that's by 14th Street, Jeff Hamilton Park? That is my scenic route to go to and from my home. And you can't see anything on the left-hand side. And y'all have been doing that, and I was very happy and very pleased about that. And so to me, it's an eyesore. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Lytle?
Alan Lytle, Temple, Texas. Just a couple of things I'd like to address. Number one, thank the council so very much for voting to pay for the police command post. It's a mobile police command post. That's actually on the agenda tonight, but it's in a consent, so it's not something I can talk about there. This is a fantastic idea. It's not only good for the police, but for the fire department and for natural disasters like the tornado we might have tonight. And I really appreciate that the council has taken the time to take care of our police department. And secondly, for the next week, actually probably 10 days, be sure that your friends, especially us old people, get plenty of water. Don't stay outside. Even just a walk to the mailbox can be deadly for those in this 110-degree heat advisory that we're going under. So please stay in contact with your friends, stay in contact with your constituents. Call them this week especially and say, hey, are you doing okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lyle. It's very thoughtful of you. Moving on to the next item is it's a presentation of the proposed Community Development Block Grant 2023-2024 Annual Action Plan and Budget, including the funding recommendations and notice of 30-day public comment period from June 11th through July 21st, 2023. Ms. Chopin with the presentation, and this item will be subject to a public hearing. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Good evening, everyone. I'm Brittany Chopin, Grant Manager for City of Temple, and I'm here to present the fiscal year 2024 Annual Action Plan. 1974, Congress created the Housing and Community Development Act. Title I of the act created the CDBG Community Development Block Grant, which must serve low to moderate income citizens. City of Temple receives CDBG funds on an annual basis from HUD. As a recipient of the funds, we're required to present a 5-year consolidated plan. And as a requirement, the annual action plan must support that consolidated plan. Activities must meet one or more of the 3 national objectives, which are benefiting low to moderate income persons, preventing, eliminating, or reducing slum and blight, and meeting an urgent community development need. Our fiscal year 2024 allocation is $674,406, which is an 18% increase. For our proposed projects, we have housing improvement, demolition, neighborhood revitalization, homelessness and mental health program, and CDBG administration. For housing improvements, our budget is $134,588, which will provide home repairs to low to moderate income citizens. For LMI demolition, will help eliminate slum and blight and through removal of deteriorating structures, and that budget is $40,000. And for code compliance, they'll focus on engaging citizens to reduce code violations, including inspection of multiple properties, and that budget is $91,405. For homelessness and mental health program, this funding, $273,532, will include development of the Arbor of Hope nonprofit and allow us to implement the ideas included in the strategic plan, Operation Rise. And Operation Rise stands for Robust Interagency Strategic Engagement. And then for program administration, the budget is $134,881, and that will be used for personnel, operating, and training costs. For the adoption schedule, the comment period began on June 11th and will end on July 21st. We have public meetings on the 27th and first public hearing now, and the second public hearing is on July 20th. We plan to submit the adopted plan August 15th and with the fiscal year beginning on October 1. Are there any questions?
No, thank you. Council, any questions?
Thank you.
You bet. Thank you, ma'am. Like I said, item 3 is subject to a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this item may do so. We just ask you step to the podium, state your name and address for the record, or raise your hand on the virtual platform. Nobody from the crowd or the platform? Okay, very good. Moving on to item 4 is the first and final reading and a public hearing to consider for consideration and action with respect to the ordinance authorizing the issuance of approximately $40 million City of Temple, Texas Combined Tax and Revenue Certificates of Obligation, Series 2023B, authorizing the levy of an ad valorem tax and a pledge of certain revenues in support of the certificates, approving an official statement and a paying agent registrar agreement, awarding the sale of those certificates, and authorizing other matters related to the issuance of those certificates. Ms. Bernard.
Yes, Mayor. Do you want to read both items?
Yes. Yep, that'd be great.
Sure, what?
The next item is the first and final reading and a public hearing to consider an action item with respect to the ordinance authorizing the issuance of approximately $44.8 million City of Temple, Texas Combined Tax and Revenue Certificates of Obligation, Series 2023A, authorizing the levy of an ad valorem tax and the pledge of certain revenues in support of the certificates, approving an official statement and a paying agent and a registrar agreement, awarding the sale of the certificates, and authorizing other matters related to the issuance of these certificates. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. I may take just a second to pull my presentation up here. But as you just read, Mayor, this is authorizing the sale and issuance of 2 series of bonds, the 2023A and the 23B. Just kind of go over the timeline of events where we've been with this issue. On April 6th, City Council considered a resolution directing publication of the notice to intent COs. intent to issue the COs. That publication ran in the newspaper, the first notice the week of April 9th, the second, the week of April 16th. And also, we made application to Standard and Poor and Moody's, or it was through Standard and Poor for a rating on the COs. We received that rating on June 5th, and today we are here for your consideration of the ordinance to authorize the sale. And on July 11th, the closing will occur and the proceeds are delivered. Just a quick overview of what these bonds will fund. The Series 2023A are for capital improvement program, including 10.3 million for public safety, 3.6 million for facilities, 18,280,000 for places and spaces, and then 12.6 million, 20,000 for mobility CIP. And all four of these, or for these projects include an interest in sinking tax pledge, and they're a term of 20-year bonds. Project funds to be deposited from the issuance of the bonds were a total of 44.8 million. Again, going over the smart growth with facilities, the public safety, places and spaces. And then in the Series 2023B is 40 million of project funds for reinvestment zone projects. And those would be 25-year term. And the intent with those is to pay with tax increment revenues. Just overview of the major projects in each area is the 10.3 million in public safety, includes the future or land acquisition, property acquisition for future fire stations, funding for the simunition shoot house of 2.2 million, and then the mobile command post vehicle that is on your agenda tonight for 1.5 million, and then funding for the fire training skills pad, and then a new fire engine, and then contingency funds. Facilities includes, which Ms. Matkey went over in the work session, service center expansion, $1,820,000 to supplement that budget for that project, some major HVAC replacements, and then elevator refurbishment in the historic post office and contingency funds. Places and spaces, this is the implementation of the neighborhood plans. Includes $4 million for Nugent Avenue from 3rd Street to 14th Street. Jones Park improvements, $3,460,000. Various district identification and signage for 2 million. The 3rd Street Miller Park Trail, 1.6 million. South Temple Parkland, 1.5 million. Playground equipment and shade structures for various parks, close to or a little over 1.2 million. Pickleball courts at Crossroad Parks. And I won't go on down the list. And then we do also have contingency funds close to 1.2 million just to cover with project, as we know, supply chains have and availability of certain materials have driven some of our costs up. Mobility of the 12.6 millions includes funding for construction of Barnhart Road reconstruction, 2.5 million for pavement preservation, 1,125,000 for the design of Midway Drive from I-35 to Hickory Road. Additional funding for North 42nd Street reconstruction, and then some signal replacements and contingency. And then with the reinvestment zone project list for the 2023B series, the major project on that list is for 34.8 million, is the outer loop from I-35 to Windland. And that also includes an overpass over the railroad in that project. It includes water line extension along Old Howard Road of 2.3 million, South Temple transmission line, segment C, 31st Street to 5th Street of 1.2 million, and then a wastewater line extension in the Little Elm for 585,000, and then again contingencies for each bond issue. And as we've mentioned before, in the 2023 to 2028 business plan, the city continues to implement the largest capital improvement plan in the history of the community, and the financing plan in that business plan recommended significant funding to invest in our infrastructure and systems, plan for, design, construct, and maintain high-quality facilities, and prioritize our park and neighborhood plans, in which this series of bonds addresses all of those. And as a reminder, our financing plan of our approach is phase funding of design and right-of-way prior to funding construction. Our goal is to minimize and stabilize the tax rate impact, in which we have with all of these issues. And our plan also is to maximize opportunity for tax-based growth, balance debt amortization year over year, and align funding with project readiness. And we do shift projects around based on their readiness. And at this time, we took bids were received on these bonds this morning, and I'd like to turn it over to Dan Wedmiller with Specialized Public Financing. He will go over the bids and make the recommendation for the low responsible bidder. And Dan is joining us virtually.
Great. Thank you, Tracy. Dan Wegmiller with Specialized Public Finance. First, apologize, I can't be there in person, but also the way I'm feeling, I'm sure you probably don't want me there. So, but I did want to go over the results because once again, you all at Temple had outstanding participation and interest in your obligations today that you're selling. Both issues were bids were received this morning. As you can see on the Series 2023A bids, we received 9 bids ranging from 3.711125% up to 3.837007%. Once again, of all the bids we've been seeing coming in lately, this ranks right up there with always a heightened interest in City of Temple obligations. I think because of your consistent bond ratings, which this issue and the 2023B both received affirmation under outstanding AA rating. I'll just note, as they mention, as pretty much every time you go for a rating, and again, these ratings are for the public to make investing decisions, but it's good feedback for you. The rating reflects their assessment that very strong management under their fiscal management assessment methodology, highlighted by regular reporting of budget to actual, investment reports to the council, formal long-term financial and capital planning, and policies pertaining to debt management and reserve levels, produces a strong institutional framework. Also, they noted the positive operating performance and maintenance of very strong reserves and liquidity. So that, again, is largely the reason that you receive such strong interest. So on 2023A, we'd recommend taking the bid from BOK Financial Securities at 3.711125%. The second bid came in on the 2023B issue. And you may note from what was presented in the agenda packet, these par amounts have dropped slightly from the 44 to 41.34 million, and in the Series 23B from 41 down to 38.36 million because of the premium bid by the bidders. So they still fund completely your project request, but the premium helps contribute to that. The 2023B, 10 bids on this issue. The interest rate is 3.948753%, bid by Mesero Financial Inc. The spread to the highest bid was 4.109479%. So once again, fairly tight bidding, expressing the interest they have in your obligations. We definitely, and just in case you have questions, the difference in interest rate is largely related to just structure of how one issue is structured versus the other. and it's matching up with zone monies or debt service requirements on the other piece. So with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions you have, or turn it back over to Tracy or Jacqueline for any other follow-up.
Thank you, Dan. And this time I'd like to ask Jacqueline with McCall, Parker, and Horton to go over any details of the ordinance.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. I'm Jacqueline Hale with McCall, Parkerson, Horton, the city's bond counsel. And we have prepared the ordinance, both ordinances with respect to your Series 2023A certificates and the Series 2023B certificates. Those ordinances have been updated, revised today to reflect the sale terms that Dan has just reviewed with you. So you will see the net interest rates in both of those ordinances, and they will formally award the sale of the certificates to each respective bidder as well within the ordinance. They've also been updated to reflect the maturity schedules for the certificates and the interest rates as well. They do look substantially similar to the other ordinances. Many ordinances you all have approved with respect to your GO bonds and other COs. Same continuing disclosure undertaking, same tax covenants as well with respect to maintaining the tax exempt status on the interest for the certificates. Upon your approval tonight of the ordinances, we will file all of the paperwork with the Attorney General's office. As you all know, they approve a transcript of proceedings with respect to each series. And prior to closing, they will issue their approving opinion on their certificates, and we will issue our opinion as well to the validity of their certificates and their tax exempt status. So happy to take any questions on the ordinances.
Thank you, Ms. Horton. Council, any questions for Ms. Horton or Mr. Wegmiller?
We just hope that Dan is feeling better soon.
Thank you very
Better.
much.
Yeah. All right. Council, if there are no questions for either of the contractors, anything for Ms. Bernard in way of further explanation? All right, then although we read them in together, council will vote on these separately. So council, I'll entertain a motion on item. Pardon? Oh, I'm sorry. I always do that. This item subject to a public hearing. Now that I remember. Anyone wishing to speak, please step to the podium, state your name and address for the record, or raise your hand on the virtual platform.
Alan Lytle from here in Temple. And I don't know if I would even understand the answer to the question I'm about to ask, but there was one company, BOK, that got one bid for the B series and was next to the highest for the A series. Why couldn't the one company come up with a good bid for both?
I will defer that question to Dan if he's still online.
Absolutely. That's a great question. You know, often when the bidders look at each structure, as I mentioned, the interest rates are a little different because the maturity schedules are a little different for each of the two series. And so they may have had more interest from prospective buyers of these because these purchasers are buying them and then they pass on and sell the bonds to either individuals, financial institutions, insurance companies, just a whole slew of potential buyers out there. So most of the time, the difference between bidders is they probably put all their effort into the Series A issue because it fit their potential clients better than the Series B. But I can also follow up specifically and ask them and report back to Tracy to share that with you all.
Thank you, sir.
You bet.
Mine's a little easier. CJ Grisham, Temple, Texas. I just wanted to know if I could get the end numbers of how much we're going to be paying once the entire thing is paid off. It's 89 or 88.9 million is are the two bonds. How much do we ultimately end up paying?
Okay, I'll get that for you.
Anyone else? Anyone on the virtual platform? No one?
I just want to understand the question you had, I'm sorry. You mean the combined payoff for both bonds together
Yes, with
yeah.
the interest.
Yeah, it
Principal
would
and
be the total principal and interest.
of
There-
both?
I will have those schedules and I will get those to you, Mr. Bishop.
Anything else? All right, then at this time, I'll close the public hearing and we'll entertain a motion on item number 4.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve item 4 as presented by Mr. Wegmiller and Ms. Hale.
We have a motion by Councilmember Long. We have a second by Councilmember Pilkington. Council, please cast your vote.
Kelly? I'm dead in the water. Shall I just vote verbally? It's aye. Sorry.
All right, item 4 passes 4 votes to 0. Moving on to item 5. I'll learn, this item also subject to a public hearing. I didn't say that we would take both public hearings at the same time. So if anyone would like to speak on this, please step to the podium, state your name and address for the record, or raise your hand on the virtual platform. Okay, there being none of either, council, I will, if you don't have any further questions for Ms. Bernard, I'll entertain a motion on item 5.
I move to approve item 5 as submitted here.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion by Councilmember Pilkington. We have a second by Councilmember Long. Council, please cast your vote. Item 5 passes 4 votes to 0. Mr. Wegmiller, thank you for your time. Ms. Horton, thank you for your time. These are always big dollars, right? CJ, to your point, it's going to be more than $88 million over the time. And but I always am appreciative of staff and the hard work that they do. To pull these projects together and to pull these dollar figures together is hundreds and hundreds of hours of work done by staff. And it's all about figuring out a way in a financially responsible manner to move the city of Temple forward. So again, as always, thank you for the extra time to staff and to volunteers to pull all this together. And this only is good news for Temple. So thank y'all. All right, moving on to the consent agenda, which is items A through M. Council, we discussed earlier about whether or not to pull anything from the consent agenda. It's my understanding that we're not pulling anything from the consent tonight. We can just move forward. Is that correct? All right. So all items listed on the consent agenda are routine items, can be enacted in one motion by the council. So council, if we're not going to pull anything, I'll entertain a motion on the consent agenda.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda items 4A through 4M. Or, yeah, 4A, 5A, sorry. 6A through 6M, sorry.
You have a motion? Second?
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Long. We have a second by Councilmember Pilkington. Council, please cast your vote. The consent agenda, items 6A through 6M, passes 4 votes to 0. Moving on to the regular agenda is the first reading and a public hearing to consider adopting an ordinance authorizing a rezoning request from ag to general retail on 0.548 plus or minus acres situated in part in the GW Lindsay survey, abstract number 513, addressed as 11926 FM 2305. Ms. Atkinson.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor, Council. Stepping in for Brian today, but I believe he is online, correct? Okay, so he's online, as well as our planners whose cases these belong to and applicants. So today is our first reading on this one, and again, second reading goes on July 6th. A little bit of background on this case. This is approximately 5.48 acres, as you just mentioned, going from agricultural to general retail, straight retail zoning. It's located just south of another CUP for alcohol sales, which is also a PDGR. And basically, this case is being brought forward to you to just address an existing non-conforming use. And it's currently being used for retail sales. It's the Renegade Classics Motorcycle Apparel Shop. Some photos of the site you can see here looking east, back towards the city of Temple. You can see there's some use there, and then also looking to the west, which is still ag as well, but that's the business right there that you can see in the background. Also, if you look, you can see adjacent to this property is the existing city water tank, city property. Also, it's PDGR. And then the future site to the north, which is the Commonwealth Restaurant and Entertainment Venue, same owner as this property. To the south, across the roadway is just some scattered residential and non-residential uses, all still zoned as agricultural. And also there's some undeveloped property nearby, which is a mixture of some PDGR and agricultural, and then also some existing retail and service uses. And that's the gas station right there, kind of on the corner of the intersection. So the zoning, looking at the proposed zoning, it's basically just expanding the general retail zoning into this area. And again, it's addressing a non-conforming use and bringing it into compliance. And so looking at our zoning, it's in compliance with that. Also, when we evaluate our future development plan, which is our 2020 comp plan, this is slated for a corridor mixed use in the future development category. And this property will provide that. So it's intended to provide a mix of both commercial and residential uses, which we see very much so in this area. So public notification and property owner notifications were sent out. 8 of them were sent out within 200 feet. We had 1 returned in agreement across the roadway, 0 notices returned in disagreement, and the newspaper was the notice in the paper was printed on May 4th in accordance with state law. Staff recommendation is approval of the rezoning from ag to general retail. And at the May 15th Planning and Zoning meeting, we had recommended approval for 5-0 along with staff recommendation. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Atkinson. Council, any questions? This item is subject to a public hearing. So ask you step to the podium and state your name and address for the record, or raise your hand on the platform. No one? All right, then I will close the public hearing, and council will entertain a motion on item 7.
Mayor, I'll make a motion on item 7 to approve as presented by Ms. Atkinson. And I'd like to add, it's been a long time since we've seen something presented with all the email or messages sent out about a rezoning, and we had only approvals, no disagreements. It was very pleasant.
The good old days.
Yeah, good old days.
Very good. We have a motion by Councilmember Long,
Second.
second by Councilmember Pilkington. Council, please cast your vote. Item 7 passes 4 votes to 0. Item 8 is the first reading in a public hearing to consider adopting an ordinance reducing the territory in the extraterritorial jurisdiction of the city of Temple and reducing the boundary limits of the extraterritorial jurisdiction to exclude 5.78 plus or minus acres of land situated in the Orville T. Tyler Survey, abstract number 20, Bell County, Texas, addressed as 2750 Taylors Valley Road. Mr. Nuttall.
Thank you, Mayor. So this first one we're going over is very similar to the next one we'll go over. So I'll go over the legal mechanisms here. and that way we don't have to do it twice. So the legal mechanism here is the local government code in chapter 42. The extent of the extraterritorial jurisdiction of the city of Temple is determined under subchapter B. And section 42.023 provides that the extraterritorial jurisdiction of a municipality may not be reduced unless the city council gives its written consent, such as by ordinance. So the requested ETJ release is right there in the green on your screen. I've highlighted the city of Temple boundaries and the city of Belton city limits as well. So this is property that's right adjacent to the city of Belton, but is still in our ETJ at the moment. The request was for 5.78 acre parcel. It's a single parcel right now, but it's owned by a developer who's got 46 acres of contiguous property. And the remainder of that contiguous property is already within the city of Belton. So their request is to make that development a single development in the city of Belton, but to do that, we can't have it in our ETJ because cities aren't allowed to go into each other's ETJ to expand their limits. So the staff recommendation is to approve the release of the 5.78 acres from the extraterritorial jurisdiction of the city of Temple. And I'm here if you have any questions.
Thank you, sir. Council, any questions for Mr. Nuttall? This item is subject to a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak may do so. Step to the podium, state your name and address for the record, or raise your hand on the platform. No one? Okay, there being no participants in the public hearing, I'll close the public hearing. And council, if you don't have any more questions for Mr. Nuttall, then I'll entertain a motion on item number 8.
Approve item 8 as presented.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion by Councilmember Pilkington. We have a second by Councilmember Long. Council, please cast your vote. Item 8 passes 4 votes to 0. Item 9 is the first reading in a public hearing to consider adopting an ordinance reducing the territory and the extraterritorial jurisdiction of the city of Temple and reducing the boundary limits of the extraterritorial jurisdiction to exclude 14.106 plus or minus acres of land situated in the W. Keeby survey, abstract number 501, and the SP Ross survey, abstract number 698. Bell County, Texas, Bellcat appraisal ID number 124607.
Yes, and one of the differences here is the other address, the other one we were able to identify by address. This one is so far out and undeveloped, it does not have an address, so we could only go by the appraisal district ID. Just to show you a vicinity of just how far from our city limits it is on the northwest side of Troy, about 2.3 miles from our nearest city limit border.
Mm.
So it's barely in our city limits as it is. This 14.106 acres plus or minus is part of an entire tract of land that's 103.43 acres total. The remainder of the parcel is in the Troy ETJ and is directly adjacent to the city of Troy, the city limits of Troy. So by releasing this, it'll allow that developer, that landowner as well, to get this single development annexed into Troy for better maintenance, better services.
Sure.
And so the recommendation is to approve the release of the 14.106 acres from the extraterritorial jurisdiction of the city of Temple.
Very good. Thank you. This item subject to a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak, please step to the podium or raise your hand on the platform. Okay. There being none, council, if there's no questions for Mr. Nuttall, I'll entertain a motion on item 9.
Mayor, I'll make the motion again to approve this item as presented by Mr. Nuttall.
Have a motion by Councilmember Long, a second by Councilmember Pilkington. Council, please cast your vote. Item 9 passes 4 votes to 0. Item 10 reads, it's the first reading in a public hearing to consider adopting an ordinance approving the Temple Parks and Recreation Department's youth program standards of care and approving the 2022-2023 annual report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, I'm here to discuss the child care standards for the city of Temple. The purpose of the child care standards, the Texas Human Resource Code, Section 41B14 establishes the requirement to exempt municipal recreational programs for elementary age children from the state child care licensing. In order to receive exempt status for a youth recreation program, a municipality must annually adopt standards of care by ordinance after a public hearing for such programs. As I mentioned up here, the regulations do not apply to government agencies who adopt their own standards. The state of Texas Department of Family Protective Services requires the governing body to adopt annual standards of care by ordinance after a public hearing. The ordinance should include staff ratios to not exceed 1 to 20. We typically stay at 1 to 15. Minimum staff qualifications, health and safety standards, age range from 5 to 13, and mechanisms and timelines for monitoring and enforcing the adopted local standards. Sorry, for some reason, the words didn't pop up for some reason. I'll go to my backup plan. My apologies.
All right.
The first one is for background checks will be conducted on all prospective employees. The second one is all staff are first aid and CPR certified, and all staff will be provided with a program and training manual. Key communication items, parents must be informed that we are not a licensed daycare facility, that we are not licensed by the state of Texas of the standards and provided access to a copy. And parents must be, they must be complete all required registration paperwork, and each child must be deemed eligible for the program. PARD offers 5 after-school sites, at 5 of them at Belton ISD, Charter Oak Elementary, High Point Elementary, Lakewood Elementary, Purtle Elementary, and Tarver Elementary, as well as multiple holiday and summer camps at various facilities such as Blackman Center, Gober Party House, Wilson Recreation Center, and other BISD sites. These are our enrollment by campus. We have the 2021-22 numbers that are next to the 2022-23 numbers. We've been averaging 25 kids at Charter Oak, 26 at High Point Elementary, 25 at Lakewood Elementary, 27 at Purtle, and 24 at Tarver, excuse me. We also have various camps throughout the year. Camp Journey, which is during Thanksgiving week, we had 35 kids. Camp Holidays, 43. Camp Adventure, 39. Various summer camps at the Wilson Park Recreation Center, 106. And the 2 biggest ones are Camp Discovery and Camp Pathfinder. This year at Purtle, we had we're averaging, last year we averaged 126 kids. As of this year, we're going to average about 144. So we've had an uptick in registration this year. Tuition assistance payment plans were created for families who provided hardship details. As of last year, no participants received scholarship assistance. Staff is not recommending any changes to the child care standards for 2023-2024. Staff recommends the approval of the 2023-2024 child care standards as presented. Questions?
It's like about a 30%, 35% drop in attendance.
Yes.
Any idea what that's attributed to?
We at Temple ISD, we did have interested parties. We didn't have the numbers that we would like to have it at 15 people because we have 2 staff members. We are currently in talks with Temple ISD to try and see, Kevin has set up a meeting for July 7th to meet with them to try and see what we can do to rectify those numbers. I do know that the grant that they were on ended in 2023. So I know that should give us an increase back in Temple.
Okay.
I will say our competition with Ralph Wilson is, they're a tough partner. They do a great program as well, and we're hoping to pick up in any extras from the grant that's that is expired. And we're also going to meet to try and see if we can bus the kids from the different schools, maybe to Wilson. During summer camps, we have over 200 kids. So if we can get 4 or 5 schools bused to the Wilson, it would be great. So that'll come in our next meeting.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that.
Mayor, I would just add or expound on, we just want to make sure, not that we're trying to duplicate a service that's already being provided. Kevin and his team just have an interest in making sure there aren't undetected barriers for kids in TISD to participate in the program, whether they be financial or transportation related. But, if there are other areas that are serving the TISD population and our programs aren't needed, we're not trying to force a duplication, but we just want to make sure that there isn't in fact a need for the services that we can address with some removal of barriers.
Sure. And I just noticed that the drop in attendance was sort of the same across each facility. So I was curious.
That's what the BISD ones that you're talking about, wasn't it? Yeah, I was curious about that too.
Anything else?
Are BISD kids using the Ralph Wilson Youth Club, do you know?
I do know Academy does. I can't say for sure that Belton does. Part of the numbers also dropping is staffing. It's been hard to, as you know, with lifeguards and after school, getting enough staff. We need to stay within those ratios. Things are improving. Kids are applying. We are getting people hired. So that might have been a slight dip. We had to cap our numbers to make sure that we were within operating range.
Very good. Anything else? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
This item subject to a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak may do so.
CJ Grisham, Temple, Texas. This is what makes our city great right here are these programs that we have for our children. This is our future. If we can keep them, especially during times where they're not in school, giving them activities in which they can continue to grow and thrive and meet with other people and socialize and stay out of trouble. That's always good. And I think we have a great program here in Temple, and I hope we do keep this up. I did have kind of a question. I just got into town, which is why I didn't do any research. So it's probably a stupid question. Do the employees, are they trained in recognizing, for example, child trafficking or child abuse? Is that part of their training? And other than that, I don't really, everything's great. Keep it up. Please prove this and do stuff for our kids.
These kids are signed up to attend these programs by their parents usually. So I don't know the answer to that, but I don't know that it's the parents that are signing them up. So I wouldn't think that would be an issue.
Yeah, I'm talking mostly about the city officials. Are the city officials trained to recognize signs of abuse or trafficking? Is the only
In the kids that are coming to the camp?
Correct.
I don't think so, but I don't know if that would be relevant in that their parents are the ones signing them up to attend.
Yeah, those parents can beat them and then sign them up and send them to camp. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. All right. Thank you, CJ.
Richard, do you have any thought on CJ's question?
We don't currently have that training, but we will certainly take that idea back and give it some thought and see what opportunities we could have to enhance that and enhance our training in that area.
Very good. Any other questions? Anyone else want to participate in the public hearing? Nothing on the platform? All right. Council, if there are no further questions, I'll entertain a motion on item 10.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion by Councilmember Grant. We have a second by Councilmember Long. Council, please cast your vote. Item 10 passes 4 votes to 0. Item 11 is to consider adopting a resolution approving the final plat of the Roosevelt Zuniga Edition, a 1.69 plus or minus acre, which is a 1-lot, 1-block residential subdivision with the developer requested exception to the UDC section 8.1.3 regarding fire hydrants situated in the city of Temple, Texas, in Bell County, addressed as 4311 Lower Troy Road. Ms. Atkinson.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. This is obviously the final hearing for this one today. Here's a vicinity map of the general area. You can see this is pretty far north within the city. Currently, it is low density. It's a single family residence on a large tract of land. The purpose of this plat is to plat just the residence and then leave the remainder of the property for future development. A little bit of background. This is a 1-lot, 1-block residential subdivision, a little over 1.5 acres. Basically, this one's coming to you guys for approval for a UDC exception to the fire hydrant requirement. It was reviewed by DRC in April and deemed administratively complete in May. This property is located within the city of Temple CCN, but currently the water is provided to that residence by the Little Elm Water Supply Corporation. Water would be addressed with future development, basically. So everything's going to remain as is currently, but future development would trigger those changes. Also, for the variance to this, it's basically this hydrant location. You can see that with the red circle there. It's approximately 1,600 feet. Fire code requires a 600-foot distance, and obviously we're not meeting that. Fire Marshal's office recommends approval based on a few things. Basically, there's no water infrastructure that would even support the installation of a fire hydrant on the current line serving the property. It's only the creation of one additional lot, and no additional development is being proposed with this subdivision. And also, it's just the presence of that one existing structure. So staff recommends approval of the final plat and the exception to the UDC section 8.1.3 for the requirement of the fire hydrant. This was taken to planning and zoning on June 5th and was voted for or recommended approval 8-0 per the staff recommendation. And I would like to note that the applicant was also feeling under the weather and is unavailable to attend today, but I'd be happy to answer any questions for you.
Thank you. Council, any questions for Ms. Atkinson? Nope. Thank you, ma'am. Council, at this time, I'll entertain a motion on item 11.
Move to approve item 11 as presented.
I'll second that.
I have a motion by Councilmember Pilkington, a second by Councilmember Long. Council, please cast your vote. Item 11 passes 4 votes to 0. Item 12 reads to consider adopting a resolution authorizing change order number 2 to the construction contract with Emerson Construction Company of Temple related to the construction of Poison Oak Road realignment Phase 1 in the estimated amount of $81,149.53. Mr.
This item is on the regular agenda for voting
Oh,
purposes.
that's right. Okay.
We'll be happy to do a presentation if you desire, but we primarily put it on the regular agenda for voting purposes.
I need a presentation? Okay, then council, I'll entertain a motion on item 12.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve item 12.
We have a motion by Councilmember Long. We have a second by Councilmember Grant, council, please cast your vote. Item 12 passes 3 votes yes, 0 votes no, and 1 abstention. Item 13 is to consider adopting a resolution authorizing change order number 3 to the construction contract with RT Schneider Construction Company Limited of Belton for the Azalea Drive realignment project in the estimated amount of $129,962.50. This item has also been pulled from consent for voting purposes only. So I'll entertain a motion on item 13.
Mayor, I'll make this motion also to approve item 13 as I represent this area and am very anxious to see Azalea completed. So I make the motion to approve this.
We have a motion by Councilmember Long. We have a second by Councilmember Grant. Council, please cast your vote. Item 13 passes 3 votes yes, 0 votes no, and 1 abstention. Moving on to item 14 is to consider adopting a resolution authorizing a construction contract with McLean Construction, Inc. of Killeen for the construction of the Knob Creek Trunk Sewer Improvements Phase 1 in the estimated amount of $13,054,964. Mr. Kalaki.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. This is the construction award for Knob Creek Sewer Phase 1. This project goes from the Dozier plant west through the Crestview neighborhood, across Avenue H, up 14th Street to about French. The OPC was 9.9 million. With add alts, our low bid was 13,186,486.50. That includes add alts for larger pipe being fiberglass versus PVC. There was some disparity between the OPC and the low bid, mostly due to materials, labor costs, the current environment. And we are recommending approval of the low bid to McLean Construction.
Very good. Thank you. Council, any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
If not, then council, I'll entertain a motion on item 14.
Accept item 14 as presented.
I'll second Ms. Grant's motion.
I have a motion by Councilmember Grant. We have a second by Councilmember Long. Council, please cast your vote. Item 14 passes 4 votes to 0. It is now 6:03 PM. Thank you all for attending.